Hi, good afternoon. I understand I'm the last session before drinks at the bar, so I appreciate you being here. My name is Debbie Chien. I am a co-founder for HomeSite. HomeSite is a prop tech marketplace listing site in Vietnam. We are brand spanking new. So you might be wondering why, in this day and age, we're starting now, when prop tech companies that are 3, 5, 10 plus years old are looking for their exit, whether it's by acquisition, by IPO, by SPAC, that we thought to come into the market now. And the argument there is, particularly for developing economies, emerging markets, timing is really crucial. You could be in the marketplace a little bit too early, and that might be the difference between success and not. One of the other hats that I wear is I evaluate investments for a family office. So we've been looking at investments in Asia in the last 10 years across different industries, but it includes real estate, technology, and so we've had a very keen interest on some of these developing economies to see where the value is coming in the future. So I'm just going to paint a picture of the background. So sorry to those that are probably well-versed in this, but this is Southeast Asia. And the economies in Asia, the country that's not pictured here is China, and China is the biggest growing economy in the last 10 years. It's not pictured on here, it has its own trajectory, but in terms of Southeast Asia, they have ridden the wave of China's development. Their GDP growth from 2008 onwards is 8, 9, 10, and then double digits. So they've had an astronomical meteoric rise. But you see in the last couple of years, it's not as strong as it used to be. But that's very common because they've now come to a developed status, and so the growth is going to plateau. But what's interesting for us to see is within the Southeast Asia area, which countries were using the trajectory of China to improve their economy, and which ones are continuing to go forward, which means that they have the economic fundamentals in infrastructure, in capital markets, in consumer goods to continue with their trajectory forward with or without China. So that paints a picture of the area, and out of that comes what they call the VIP economies. It's a very catchy term for the 3 most populous countries in the area, which is Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. They have, you can see 100 million, 270 million, 100 million. These are very populous countries where if you're looking at digital growth, you're looking at per user, and it becomes very enticing. The one economy that's not on this map either is Myanmar. Myanmar was on the radar screen for many years. It's a little bit sad, their demise, but they're kind of no longer in the running. So most people are looking at VIP economies. There's a lot of foreign direct investment going into it. There's digital growth. You can see on the bottom there are, even now 40 million new internet users. The penetration isn't still at 100%, but it's getting there and it's close. So the digital growth is interesting because if you take a developed market where the GDP per capita might be more, let's say Singapore, you have 5 million. I could make $10 off of each person in Singapore and still be short of making $1 off of everybody in the Philippines, and you have a bigger potential market there. Now, in terms of VI and P, the Philippines has a very centrally located place. It is English-speaking. A lot of outsourcing companies have gone to do FDI there. Indonesia is, of course, a very big country, has a lot of natural resources as well, so a lot of FDI is oil and gas related. Vietnam has actually benefited from trade wars with China, the US with China. So during that time, a lot of companies hopped over the border and outsourced their manufacturing and other companies through there. There's manufacturing in its own. They have a lot of sports equipment. If you wear Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, it's probably made in Vietnam and then shipped over to the US. So that's something that is interesting of the region. So when we look at the growth in Asia, we believe that it's going to come from Southeast Asia. Now, foreign direct investment and speculatively, because China has compressed a little bit, the investment that was previously going to China is now looking for new areas. The PE multiples aren't there anymore. The value proposition of a foreign joint venture financing, they don't need it. So investors and people were going up the risk curve and looking at other different places. And it's becoming an economy that works kind of symbiotically. If you invest in one country, it's easy or it's possible to passport to another because the economies will work together. You have developments like ASEAN nations together. You have the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. These are trade agreements, and RCEP as well, that want the economies to work a little bit closer together so that they can grow economically. So it takes us to, I'll just give you a bit of real estate background in the region. So these are the top 5 markets. You see in Singapore is 20% primary. That's a developed market. You can see in Vietnam and Indonesia, it's 50% primary. So they're building, there's new developments coming up. The primary market and the secondary market work very differently when you're looking at prop tech. Developers are going to do block sales. They're going to have different kind of marketing budgets. They're not going to look at single listing per unit. That comes mostly from the secondary market. So while this is moving forward, you will see that, as countries develop, they will go from primary to secondary and predominantly secondary. Hong Kong as a market is even slimmer. The primary market is minuscule. Another point here on the slide that's interesting is the percentage of Vietnam compared to the rest. It's actually the second largest spender in expenditure for digital online ads. That takes it up to the 3rd place overall, even though Malaysia has less transactions. You'll notice, though, out of VIP, I is on the bottom and P fell off the map. So from those countries, you're looking at a resurgence of certain demographics that make it a little bit more conducive to having a new prop tech venture. I'm going to take Vietnam as an example. Some of these things are passportable to the other countries in the region, but because we know it very well, I'll kind of talk about this one. The internet economy is forecasted to grow exponentially. The word they use is exponential. 5 times, 10 times, however you want to do it. There's a very good report that comes out every year that gives you some of the figures in Southeast Asia. It's put together by Temasek, Bain, and Google. And it does track the number of users and the internet economy. Now, the highlighted passage in the middle is during 2020 and 2021, which was prime COVID time, 8 million new digital users. It meant that if you read the headlines, Vietnam locked down twice, the second time pretty hard. You had 12, 15, 16 weeks of people that couldn't leave their house. So shops were closed, no taxis, no corner stores. So you had to get everything that you needed from your phone digitally, sent to you. You were getting onto apps. The government was coming up with new apps for you to use. And this is something that drove all the people that were maybe resisting to go onto the digital economy, like the 70-year-old lady living in one of the streets. She doesn't want to go on it. Now she's forced to use it. And that's where you see the big push. And that is great because it means that now they're online, they're able to use it, they're familiar with it, and you have the conversion for some of the things happening there. The other thing that happened is during COVID, real estate growth also increased. Even before, there was a lot of developments, new developments coming up. During COVID, it stagnated a little bit. During COVID, I think in 2021, on the tail end of it, investment came pouring in again. And you're looking at foreign investments and foreign developers coming in, Korean, from Singapore, from Japan, from Taiwan. And with that comes also an interest from the domestic market into the real estate market into Vietnam. So you're looking at a push from the supply side with developments, as well as potential new buyers that are coming into the market as speculative or investments. In the Vietnam property market, there's 2 things that really drive ownership right now. One is starting in 2015, the Vietnam government made a path for anybody born in Vietnam or parents who had a passport in Vietnam, a path to reclaim their national ID or get a passport. That means they can own land. That means they can buy all property. Vietnam, similarly to Indonesia and even Singapore is limited to citizen holders. If you're not a citizen, you cannot own land. You may take a 20 or 30-year lease. You may buy special areas of property for foreigners, but you can't own land. And so that paves a way for, let's say, the 7 million overseas Vietnamese, the diaspora, to consider buying and looking at land prices, which keep going up in value. The second thing that happened is they made a foreigner quota. So any new buildings has a foreigner quota of about 30%. That means 30% can be sold scot-free to foreigners. They can hold it in their name or their company. They can sell it to other foreigners. Some of the older buildings that have already come to the market, they have a portion that can be sold from citizens to foreigners. So that means there's overseas buyers coming in to look for things. The other driving force for the property market, and I would say this is similar to, Thailand, you can do a 50% ownership. Indonesia, you can also have, places where you can buy. But these are driving forces why there's speculation coming into the market and investors. And the third thing is, in the region, people are searching for yield. If you're investing in property, Singapore gives you maybe 2 to 3% yield. You're looking for capital appreciation. In Hong Kong, it's probably even less, like 2, 1, 0, sometimes even negative. There's no renters for rental yield. And so when you're looking at those kind of comparisons, and then you're looking at Vietnam, where, let's say, Ho Chi Minh City, you could have 8 to 10% yield, plus the capital appreciation that comes with it. The purchase price is also less. In developed markets, maybe a 2-bedroom place costs you $1 million. That same place will maybe cost you $250,000. So it's a very different play for them, and you can get financing from overseas, which is still one of the hurdles in Vietnam. Now, that sounds all very great, so you see a lot of transactional values. In 2022, we consider that it will probably be the same trajectory with a lot of interest there. That sounds great, but of course there are challenges for any developing markets. One of the big challenges is that there isn't as much oversight as developed markets. There isn't as much training. In fact, for agents, most of them don't have any training. There is no license there's no license you're supposed to have. You're supposed to have a license, but not that many agents get them. There's an article 2 weeks ago that said about 90% of the agents are not properly licensed or have any training, which is very different from the US. You all have to get a brokerage license to do any kind of real estate. And there are a lot of agencies, 7,000 plus agencies alone, which means that it's a very bifurcated market. There's probably consolidation that will come in the future. The other thing is that out of the marketplace listings currently, it's estimated that 25% of them are fake, so they're scams. And that, I think, is not just for Vietnam, but you get this kind of like emerging market special, right? Like there's a posting, it looks too good to be true. They say, oh, give me your number, let me connect with you on WhatsApp or on Zalo, which is their equivalent. And then they send you listings that might be interesting, but they're firing the photos off one by one, so your phone is blowing up. Or you've got 200 photos, there's no link, there's nothing else. It just says, hey, come and look at this. You go to bed the next morning, you're now joined in about 25 different interest groups from, selling face cream to do you want to buy a car and do you want to go on a vacation to this place? They're phishing. So they're finding your contact because the value is still each person getting their contact to see what they can sell you at, what they can sell to you. And that's something that just needs a bit of time for them to find the professionalism that goes with real estate if you're only interested in real estate. So that's something that is still one of the big challenges there. They still don't have an official centralized property listing. It's also an emerging market kind of issue. Not like the US, it's public record. You can see anybody who owns anything. There they have what's called pink book, a red book. It's a little bit different in the ownerships. Some of them aren't registered. There's still a lot of eminent domain where they're building infrastructure, so they may want to take your property out. Most of the developers are still at a 25 to 35-year lease, But their bet is if they build a 6-tower structure with 800 units and 2,000 people live there, in 25 years, they're probably not going to tear it down. But it's still some of these challenges that are hard to do in an emerging market. So in order to combat that, there's also a few other things that are relevant to the market, which is the property listings. They're extremely price sensitive. They are price sensitive and platform disloyal, which means that the fees that they need to pay or willing to pay is very low. A lot of advertisement for housing is still done on Facebook and Facebook groups because it's for free and you see them littered all around it and the same kind of agents doing it. If I take the numbers from Singapore, so for instance, Property Guru, the average spend per listing is about $3 well, let's call it $2 to $3 US. The average spend per agent per month is around $200 to $300 US. The average starting salary in Vietnam is $500 per month. They're just not going to spend like that in an emerging market. They're also, I think we spoke earlier, someone said earlier, what about subscription models? They don't have the available cash for subscription models, so that's very challenging. They really want a pay-as-you-go, and they really want as low fees as they possibly can to get that everywhere, to get that on the platform. And the other thing is that they're not loyal to one platform. It is very easy for them to list across platforms to get as much exposure and leads as possible. So that's good for us because we're new. The second thing that we're trying to address is the quality of agents. Because many of them are not licensed, some of them are just doing it for fun, or they have a property that their cousins own, that we want to award and highlight the professional agents. So we have found out in our research that any professional agent has at least 30 listings that they're working on every month. This is a full-time agent trying to do it as professionally as possible. They also have a number of quality photos, just not like 2 or 3 blurry photos for you, but they have a certain amount of photos that are also very good, and they're willing to spend a little bit. Those that are willing to spend want to get up in the listings, want to get up in search so that they can generate leads and do sales. And that's something that we're trying to work with to rank agents, especially the ones that are willing to pay, especially the ones that have a certain number of listings. They will go higher in our algorithm so that they're awarded for kind of what we consider is to be a serious and professional agent. The last thing is we're using technology to power insights for the user. These are data on pricing, on neighborhood. There's a lot of data that exists out there. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit. It needs to be put in a format that's usable. If you want to find an apartment in one city and your price point is this much, but you want these certain amenities, you want a pool and you want a gym, you have a certain number, you should be able to see a list of places that would be suitable for you. And that's when we're using technology to really drive the data skewering, to find out in a neighborhood where's the closest school, where's the closest grocery store, these kind of things that would help discernible buyers, especially if they're coming from overseas or looking from overseas, to help them make the decision. So this is a PropTech ecosystem that we feel works for developing markets. Number one, it has to be a self-service platform. From start to finish, from making postings, to payment online, to seeing all your leads, to having rankings, to having an account where you can put money in, these all have to be automated because you need to make the team as lean as possible. We offer a freemium model because you come in, you list on a basic level so that you can see that there is visibility, and then we have it, pay to get up in the search rankings. And because it's tech-enabled and we don't have a large team, we don't want salespeople. We have seen in the market, if you came early, you have a very big roster of sales and you have staff. That's really terrible in places like COVID. When you have COVID, everybody doesn't want to look at apartments, so you have staff just sitting there, and many companies have had to lay them off. And so for this to really work well, you have to keep the prices low. You still need to make a company that's viable, right? Nobody's going to invest in a company that never makes any money. So you need to keep the team lean so that you can offer lower prices. The other thing that we're trying to incorporate is to make it easier for overseas buyers to also look into the market. The bulk of it will still be local investors or buyers are looking at it, but there is also an element of overseas buyers that will enhance the market, that will make it interesting for people to come and invest in. And the one other thing I'll add is something I take from the family office, is that money is money, but smart money is better. So while we're looking for capital to continue for the next turn and the next turn, you really want smart money coming in, people that can help you open doors, strategically look at things, are familiar with the market. We also have a board that we're assembling that is players in the market. We just announced one of the board members is like a 30-year veteran in finance who's worked in Vietnam for 10 plus years. And that's the kind of people that will help grow this, because there is an element of timing, there's a little bit of luck, and you have to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time. I'm going to pause there. I have one more slide, but I thought I might just open for questions, if there are any. Okay. I'll talk one more thing about the PropTech ecosystem, which is that the conversion to mobile usage and also online, there are things that they did convert to during lockdown, which is if I need to order groceries or if I need to do something else. For any large ticket item, there's still a distrust for what you can see online to what you want to see in person. There is an evolving trend, let's say, of people coming to the market looking for property, but just spending all day looking at property and never with the intention to buy. That, I think, is a waste of the time for agents. And so we're looking for ways that would actually make this a much more pleasant experience for everyone. There's also something where we're focused on the marketplace side of it. There is, I think we heard earlier, the agency, the fees on the end, and also ancillary services. We have seen that if you specialize too much on one end of things, or you try to be too broad, it doesn't really work for you. What we're trying to do here is just to make a platform that is easy to use, bilingual in English and in Vietnamese, so that local and overseas buyers would be able to easily use it and have it useful.
Thank you very much. Bruce, if we could have Slido, please. Thank you. Well, an interesting thought, and this is probably going back to something that maybe Malcolm was talking about earlier today. Wouldn't it be better just to become a tech-enabled broker, use all this knowledge and understanding you're developing, and have the top agents work for you?
There is an argument for that. However, the problem is when you employ the top agents, your balance sheet or your liabilities become even larger. You have these agents working for you. In a market where a lot of the primary market is coming as new builds, they will have their own agents focused on block sales. To have, the question moved, to have those employed on your balance sheet, I think for us, we feel like it's not the smart move. The smart and nimble move is to be very lean. Agents will work for themselves, they will work for other agents, and that already exists in the market. We don't need to come on the new player and kind of compete with that. It's also when you have staffing, you also have those liabilities to worry about.
Okay. So then the second question is then probably quite relevant, is how are you going to differentiate yourself from the existing players in the market? What are you going to do that's different?
We have a few things. One is our fees are much lower. Because our team is lean, because it's more efficient, we are probably 30% of the market right now. If they're charging more, we're 80% or 70 to 80% less than them. So we're charging much less, and we're able to get as much or different kind of traffic. We are going to look for different avenues of bring traffic to the site that is not just the domestic market. We do believe that the overseas market, especially now that Vietnam has opened, most countries have opened now, Indonesia, Singapore, they've all opened. Once that is open, people can come and see the properties. in person, and that overseas buyer is driving the market prices.
How do you, and then related to that, and I know a bit about the area and some of the stuff that's happening, how do you then, from that perspective, compete with the DUI, IQIs of the world who are already operating cross-border, significant revenues, 15,000, what they call warriors, working for them, and they've cracked the code on how do you get 15,000 people to work for you without the liability, okay? Because one thing that seems to be quite consistent in that part of the world, and I'm sure if you talk to Ronnie, who's around here, who's from Brazil, for example, is that you can get people to work for you commission only, okay? And then it's how do you structure that? So how do you, once again, it then becomes a differentiation equation as well, right? Because other people are looking at this segment. So how do you plan to grow your traffic? How do you really plan to be doing something very different? And is it technology driven, or is it just traffic driven and lead driven? What's going to be the...
Simon, that's like 10 questions in one.
I know.
Let me
it's probably
probably
25 years ago,
first
so
one.
I've got a
still
feeling.
jet-lagged.
Yeah.
I think so to answer them, I think, IQI is a company that, has a different business model. They actually do come on platforms like this, and they do pay advertisers because they want visibility. So there isn't a sense that, we have to compete with them. The property agencies, they can list across platforms, and that's actually better because everybody can do it together. In terms of some of the other questions, part of what we're figuring out is that in a developing economy, it is still developing. You are seeing the number one players, number two players moving their business model a little bit, changing the way they do things. What we've seen is anybody that has a large staff or balance sheet, if you're doing fractionalized ownership or financing or those kind of things, are going to be hurt in down markets. Now, we may have another COVID wave. They may lock us down again. There may be a new variant. Inflation might come in and wipe everything out. Anything with a large balance sheet right now, I would say we would stay away from. We do want to use technology to enhance it. We want to have a self-service platform that can come and do everything. It's not that we don't want sales team, because we do need conversion, but we don't want to employ a sales team and count on them to convert one or two agents together. What we want to do is do a bottom up and top down. So bottom up means organic growth. We want them to see the value, try it out, post one or two listings. Maybe give them a trial to see how it goes. They like it, they'll post 5 or 6. Soon they'll post 30, they'll post 50. That's the organic growth of the experience of using it. The top down is strategically, can we sign on with the big agency? We will talk to the developers. We will talk to foreign developers. Do you want to list your properties in a bulk format, top down? But we have to be also careful. We don't want this just to be one developer or one agency, because it will just look like we are kind of formatting for them versus we want to be the entire market.
Okay. And then how do you help overseas buyers buy new property, new developments from the developers, and avoid getting scammed in this whole process?
Well, scammed is hard, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to reward agencies that work, or agents that work in a professionalized way. They're working in a way that they're reputable, they have their business, and they are able to kind of, service the function that way. Some of the value-added services, though, is looking at contracts, the legal framework, make sure you sign it properly. Know to look for the red book or the pink book. Make sure it's registered with the government. These are kind of things that you would do to avoid getting scammed. And you want to see that they have, the right licenses or the right kind of track record.
Okay. Debbie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Good luck with this venture.
Thank you very much. Oh, I had a long slide.
Thank you very much. I need that back. Thank you.